And welcome back to Love Your Food. This week we're doing sort of a Tex-Mex sort of thing. We're doing these bacon-wrapped jalapeno poppers, and we're going to spice these up a little bit. We feel like the ones you can get frozen that you deep fry, or the ones you get at restaurants, are a little plain, a little ordinary. We're going to spice these up and make them a little more interesting. So we're going to start with our jalapeno peppers. We're going to use a shallot. The cheese is going to be a little bit of feta, some cream cheese, and some parmesan cheese. We've got some garlic powder. We're using some mushrooms and some bacon. So the first thing we're going to do is start treating our mushrooms. So we're going to make kind of a lazy and quick duxelle and make this very, very fine. We're going to dice these mushrooms quite small. So we do want to get these into a pretty small dice. So you see Chef Caleb here is going to get these chopped up nice and little. And if you still see a few larger pieces in there, you haven't quite got them all down, you can always just run your knife through there another couple times. If you see any large pieces, just go ahead and get those squared away. So once we've got all of the mushrooms done, we're going to get our shallot chopped as well. And we do want this pretty small as well, so again, we're just going to chop this really, really small. A nice little fine dice of shallot. You can see nice little small pieces there. Now we're going to cook this in a little bit of butter. So we're going to get some butter into a pan. We're going to get that melted. We're going to add our mushrooms. We're going to add our shallots just slightly before the butter is completely melted. So in go the shallots. Now you don't want to add your mushrooms until that butter is completely melted. So we're going to get the shallots going here. We're just going to get them slightly wilted a little bit before we add our mushrooms in there. And now the butter is all melted, we can add our mushrooms. And we're going to cook these until much of the liquid comes out, and then it becomes, again, sort of dry. So with mushrooms, that's commonly how you want to do it. You want to cook them until they're wet and then dry again. So we've got all of our little nicely chopped mushroom in there. We're going to just give that a little bit of seasoning. So a good little sprinkle of salt and a little bit of fresh cracked black pepper as well. And you want to give that a little stir just to make sure everything's well combined. Get the salt on everything, make sure that the oil is touching all the mushrooms. You want to also combine the mushrooms with the shallots that have started cooking as well. And then just spread that out in your pan, and we're just going to let this cook. This is going to cook for quite some time until it's all nicely done and finished. Meanwhile, we can start preparing our other items. So we have our jalapenos. Now you don't want to cut right through that top because we want the both sides to be intact so it will hold the cheese. But we're going to cut these into halves and leave the ends on. We're going to get rid of all the middle bits, all the seeds, all that's going to get taken out. And remember, you're not going to be cutting off if you have marks or anything on the outside of your jalapenos. Don't cut those off. You don't want to leave holes in them. You want them to be intact for this recipe. You do want to make sure that it's going to hold all of the ingredients on the inside. Once you have all your jalapenos ready, we're just going to prepare those. We're going to get those ready on a baking sheet lined with some parchment paper. And just set those aside while we get our filling ready. So here's our cream cheese. We're going to take that and mix it with our other some of our other cheeses as well. So the cream cheese is going to go in along with the onion powder or garlic powder, whichever you prefer. And we're also going to add some of the Parmesan cheese. So if you're going to be adding Parmesan or another sort of dried hard cheese like this, you won't need to salt this because there's going to be quite a lot of salt in that. So just give that a good stir, make sure it's all well combined. And then once that's done, we are ready to start adding some of our other ingredients. So first thing we're going to do is break up the feta cheese. You just want to make sure it's sort of small pieces, it's a little bit fluffy. This is going to add a little zing to that cheese. It's that nice sour feta flavor. So that's going to go in as well. And from there, this can just sit for a little while. We're going to deal with finishing this once all of the other ingredients for the filling are complete. So we're going to deglaze. You see the mushrooms have gotten quite a bit drier. They've shrunk a lot. We're going to deglaze with a tiny bit of cognac. That is entirely optional. And pretty much immediately we're going to add those right into that bowl with the cheeses. So that's all ready to go. We're going to give that a good stir and make sure that it is all well combined. Okay, so there we go. We're getting that all mixed in and going to make sure that it's all well distributed. And this is going to be the filling for all of our jalapeno poppers. Now we want to make sure that all of these get well filled but not overfilled. We don't want them to be heaping because essentially they're going to overflow in the oven once the cheese starts to melt, and we want to keep it all inside the dish, not all over the parchment paper. So fill them up to the top, but don't fill them over the top for this recipe because it will sort of make everything fall out. Now, next thing we're going to do is wrap these in bacon. So the trick here is we're using just regular store brand, just average bacon, because it stretches quite nicely. Those quite thin slices stretch very well. And you want to make sure that the meaty part, so you see it's pretty streaky bacon, so there's the meaty end and the fat end. You want the meat end to be inside. So the fat end is going to be on the outside of the roll. And this just helps everything cook a little bit better. It helps render the fat out a little bit, and then the fat renders out instead of going into your dish. So once these are all wrapped, we are going to get these into the oven. So these are not, standard jalapeno poppers. They're not deep fried. We're going to pop these in the oven and just bake them until they're nice and a little bit crispy, and they got that nice golden color on the outside of the bacon. So that's going to go into a preheated oven. We're going to take a quick look, and they're still quite pale. You see a lot of the fat rendering out of the bacon, but we're just going to let that sit for a little bit longer in the oven. And really, you can let these cook for as long as you want. You can get them as dark as you like. You can let them get very, very crispy on the outside. We took them out about here, and you can see some nice browning on the outside. It's going to get a little bit browner as they cool as well. They were a little bit crispy. They still had that nice chewiness to the bacon as well. So this is exactly where we wanted them. So we're going to let them cool just a little bit so that they're not molten magma hot on the inside. And that's about what they look like in cross-section. And they're ready to eat. That's it. That's the whole thing. Really, really simple. No deep fryer involved in this. You don't need to batter these or dredge them or anything. It's just wrapping in bacon. Is a little bit time consuming, but That's the only tricky part. So if you like this recipe, please do like and subscribe. And if you have any recipes you'd like to see Chef Caleb try on the channel, please let us know in the comments below. And remember to love your food.